This episode of the PC Perspective Podcast is brought to you by Casper, a sleep brand that continues to revolutionize its line of products to create an exceptionally comfortable sleep experience, one night at a time. Get $50 off select mattresses by visiting casper.com/pcper and use promo code PCPER at checkout. Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 484 being recorded on... January the 24th, 2018. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrus.
And I'm Alan Malventano.
It might have been the most dramatic.
He was busy trying to type
turn.
in. He was trying to type in his thing on the show notes.
I see. We caught him mid-type, so to speak.
Caught him with his pants down.
You know, putting pen to paper, if you will.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like you.
No. Only happens
Josh seems like the kind of guy who would write handwritten love notes to people, right?
I just meant that he doesn't write.
Oh, that's more accurate. Yeah.
Have you tried writing a handwritten note lately?
I still I don't transcribe. I still write notes like at meetings, like for work meetings that I'm on, conference calls and stuff.
Okay.
On a physical pad of paper. It's a small physical pad of paper that fits in my back pocket. Very convenient for at like CES or something like that, carrying it with you. And
you became a hipster and switched to moleskin notebooks.
I did.
I tried signing my name in a legible manner today. I gave up.
I've never been able to do that. I never attempted to do that.
I was signing something. I was like, people might need to be able to read the signature.
Squiggle.
And no.
I've just gone full squiggle.
Welcome to the show, everybody. We talk about computer hardware sometimes on this. Earlier, we thought we were going to do a airline pricing discussion.
It was a roaring discussion that may very well have spilled over onto the podcast.
But I feel like that's probably not what people want. So instead, we'll just talk about hardware for a little bit. We do record this show on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific at pcper.com/live. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We have a live chat room. I guess there's no reason to have a not live chat room.
You have to send handwritten letters to the chat room.
We have a chat room there, so you can interact with us. You can even, if you want to talk to Kyle Bennett, sometimes he stops in there and makes fun of us during the show. So that's worthwhile. You can join us at pcper.com/live. If you need a reminder, you can go to pcper.com/subscribe. This is basically just a simple form. You give us your name and your email, and we'll send you a notification through email, not like a browser pop-up, not a text message, any of that garbage. Straight to your inbox, 2 hours, an hour, 30 minutes
spam
before.
folder.
Yeah, straight to your spam folder. We don't let anybody else access this. We don't use it for sales or purchases or other crap like that. So sign up for that if you want. We greatly appreciate it. And of course, we still have our Patreon campaign running. That is at patreon.com/pcper. This is your ability to directly contribute to us should you feel the desire or the value behind it. If you run an ad blocker, if you think the videos that we do are funny, if you think all those special edits that Jim does to the mailbag, like maybe Josh is a Street Fighter character, are worth $5 a month to you, you can absolutely do that. It can be $1, $3, $5, $10, $20, $30 a month, up to whatever you want. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you that do that. As is always the case, if you become or increase your patronage during the show, we will give you a shout out on the show like we are right now, as Lord Hog has just become a new Patreon subscriber for $5. Thank you very much, Lord Hog, for your support. I feel like that quote's going to be used against me sometime in my life. The Patreon stuff does allow us to do cool things like the mailbag I mentioned earlier. This one here is episode number 27. We answer questions such as, what is a core? Where are the FreeSync 2 monitors? What is the day-to-day of Shrout Research? What is Shrout Research? Maybe you don't know what that is. Ryan's fallback career. Also an interesting discussion. Hairstyle tips, also very important. We talk about Steve from Gamers Nexus and whether or not he should cut his hair.
Oh, yes.
Right? I think this is a very important discussion.
Yes.
I bet Kyle would have some input on this, on should long-haired hippies have to cut their hair?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Or color it.
If we gave Steve from Gamers Nexus Alan's haircut, how much would his channel suffer because of it? I think greatly.
Probably a lot.
I think greatly. So check that out if you find that interesting. You can find those on youtube.com/pcper or just go to pcper.com and you'll find them in the spot there too. So let's get into the reviews and stuff for the week. We're going to start with talking with Ken, actually, who's sitting behind the switcher again, as Alex is apparently never returning to us and will be on eternal vacation.
He's lost at sea from all we can tell.
Yeah.
He started on a 3-hour tour. That was 2 weeks ago. So
I've never actually had to interact with somebody who legitimately has no digital contact with the outside world for 7 days at a time.
When he goes on vacation, he really goes on vacation.
When I'm like, hey, are you back on Wednesday? And I don't get a reply until Saturday because, I came back to the island and found Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh.
So then I can tell you that I'm taking one more week.
Another week.
Yes.
All right. All right. Fair enough. But let's talk to Ken instead about the Dell Inspiron 13 7373, a very sexy name. This is one of my legitimate problems with, I guess, product naming in general. It's not really a Dell problem. Is that the Dell Inspiron 13 is a product that's been around for a long time, and then you have these submodels, but Dell doesn't expose these submodel numbers very.
They're getting better at
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, with like the XPS 13 and this model, they're getting better at putting it higher level on their website.
Are they? Okay, because Lenovo was guilty of this at the same time too. It'd be the new X1 Yoga or whatever it was, but you wouldn't really know unless you knew what specifications look for if you were getting the 2015 model, the 2014 model, or what have you. So the Dell Inspiron 13 7373 is a 2-in-1. Is this comparable to the XPS 13 2-in-1 essentially?
No, because it uses the 15-watt parts instead of the Core M that the 2-in-1 uses.
But is it the same kind of form factor and size?
No, it's definitely thicker. This is more like the Idea Pad Yogas, not like the X1 Yoga that are super thin, but more of like the. It's more mainstream than flagship laptops like the XPS 13 and the Spectre and stuff like that.
So what's specification-wise? We're looking at Core i5. So these are 8th gen parts, right? So these are this is actually a quad-core hyper-threaded platform starting at $879 with a 1080p 13.3-inch screen, integrated graphics, obviously. The model they sent us has 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage, a SATA drive, 802.11ac. You can see the connectivity options there. What were your kind of takeaways from the either the internal design or the external design as you were looking at it?
So quite honestly, this is a notebook. This is a kind of a, for better or worse, run-of-the-mill notebook. This is what you would expect from a modern, well-built machine. It's still made out of metal. The keyboard still feels really good. It seems almost identical to the XPS 13 keyboard, which I know you really like. I think it might have a little bit more travel, though, because it's a thicker design. Plastic trackpad, so it's not like a glass-covered trackpad, but I actually kind of tend to prefer the matte finish as long as it doesn't wear out over use, which we obviously don't know if that'll happen because we've only had a couple weeks with it. But this is what I'm calling the everyman's notebook. It doesn't have super thin bezels, but at the same point, hey, guess what? They can put a Windows Hello IR-enabled webcam in the place it should be.
At the top, in the middle. Yeah.
And that's what that is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. An actual webcam. It doesn't look up your nose.
Weird.
What an awesome idea.
It has ports, has a full-size HDMI port. One thing I'm disappointed with is, even though it can apparently charge over Type-C, some people in the comments were saying, it still comes with a barrel plug charging.
Boo.
I really just want to see everyone ditch those and let's go to USB-C charging on everything. It's very convenient to not be tied to your OEM charger.
Yep. Full-size SD card.
I mean, if
2
there's-
USB. Yeah.
But if it'll charge with USB-C, then you're not.
But they don't give you one in the box.
Oh, sure, but you're not tied to your OEM charger. You just put that
You're
someplace
not.
and.
But then you have a useless port.
Yeah.
Right, like if it was Type-C power delivery, you could also still use it as a USB-C port, which would be nice.
Yeah. So what about performance on this guy, right? It has those quad-core parts. It's something we have looked at previously. Looks like performance is kind of in line with expectations.
Interestingly enough, it was a bit above expectations. So I compared this to the other two i7 8550U machines we looked at in our 8th gen performance piece, the Spectre X360, which is a 15-inch, slightly thicker 2-in-1, and then the ZenBook 3 Deluxe, which is a super thin and light MacBook Air type 13-inch design.
Right.
And then we also compared it to the last gen X1, which is an Ultrabook, and then the Dell Inspiron 15 Gaming from this generation, which is a true quad-core H-series part. And in most tests, it won. kind of the only thing it didn't come ahead in was PC Mark, because all of these other machines had PCI Express SSDs in them. So it definitely had a bit of a disadvantage to PC Mark. But if you look at the results there at the top, like it kept up with the machines, even with PCI Express SSDs. So Dell, the thermal tuning that Dell did with the 8th gen 15-watt CPU, it seems to never really be throttling. It seems to be kind of kicking ass in this form factor.
Interesting.
What SSD was in there? Did you know?
This is a SanDisk X400, which...
Okay.
Since it's an OEM, you don't know if that will actually be the SSD you get, but the one we had is an X400.
Yeah.
Which
that's finally turning around to like halfway decent out of SanDisk. Historically, SanDisk parts were like not the best at like random access.
Right.
Even for they were just like They just get kind of stuttery and stuff like that. The newer ones don't seem as bad.
As we might talk about later in the podcast, it's getting kind of difficult to F up a SATA SSD.
Yeah.
Everyone seems to be kind of getting there.
Getting harder to differentiate, nothing else.
Yeah.
So what about battery life? This looked like maybe a pain point for it then.
This is the one disappointing point I came across. Performance is great. The price is really competitive, especially with sales they've been having, but the battery life sucks. And it's not due to anything other than having a small battery. So it's only a 38 watt hour 3-cell battery in it, which is the smallest out of any of the computers we tested. And as you can see, like even the gaming laptop with the H series part got significantly more battery life because it had a larger battery in it.
Yep.
And even the super thin and light ZenBook we have on here was a 46 watt hour battery compared to the 38 in this thicker Dell. So
interesting.
I mean, if you look at the teardown, it doesn't really look like there's a whole lot more room for battery, but I mean, maybe
Creative engineering needed to be played in. Yeah.
It's very disappointing.
And what about pricing then?
So when I was writing this, it was on sale. This bottom SKU we were taking a look at, which is actually an awesome value because the lowest end laptop you can get has 8 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig SSD, which I consider the sweet spot for any notebook. That's how I compare price comparisons for notebooks for people. Is you want 8 gigs of RAM and at least 256 gigs of storage. I still think 512 is a little niche, but 256 is the sweet spot. It was $750 when I was writing this review. Now I think it's up to $800, but still way below the MSRP of $879. So these notebooks seem to be on sale pretty frequently. Which is
how's the screen look?
It's not bad. It's an IPS display. I don't think it gets quite as bright as I would like in some scenarios, but it was perfectly passable for anything really.
They probably did that because of the smaller battery, just to try to make it so the average person that just cranks the brightness up, because there are plenty of people that do that.
Oh, sure.
They'll just run brightness at max.
Yeah, like when we were running our battery test, it was definitely on the higher end because we run at 180 nits. So it was close to, it's like 80% backlight or something like that, I think.
Well, it's nice because, not throwing in like a TN panel or something crap like that to get the price point lower is...
Yeah.
There's
really no
cheap.
concessions besides the battery in this thing.
Nice. It's interesting. I really didn't expect these quad-core parts to come down to this price point this quickly, right? I thought they would be in the Dell XPS 13 for a while and the Lenovo ThinkPad X1, the flagship models. But to see it come down into here and be in that $800 price range is actually pretty great. But it puts a lot of kind of pressure now on what AMD can do with its Ryzen mobile parts, what Qualcomm is going to do with its mobile parts in the space, right? Because when they launched in Hawaii, they were talking, $700, $800 for their top end parts. So it puts it in competitive here with, from a performance standpoint, there will be no, other option than Intel's part will perform significantly better. The battery life question will be probably weighed towards Qualcomm, and then how much do you value the idea of the LTE connectivity? So,
I mean, this isn't a super sexy laptop, but I think it's something that's pretty good for just about every user. And in reality, how many people need 8 to 10 hours of battery life a day? Like, that's a lot of people, like business travelers and stuff. I mean, students have AC ports in a lot of rooms now, so 5 to 6 hours will get you through a study session in the library. Like, it's not bad. It's just disappointing.
Right. Fair enough. Before we get into our next story, we've got some Patreon churn over here. Let's see. Jorge Castro. I feel like we've heard that name before. Is a new pledger of $3. Thank you very much, Jorge. Undermined edited their pledge from $5 to $6. Thank you. Wayne Prolisco pledged $5 as a new pledge. Thank you very much, Wayne. DJ Nightcat on Twitter just pledged $5. That's awesome. I'll only ever drink raw water if it comes from Josh Walrath's stream. Just pledged $5.
Wow.
Oh, dear Lord.
So thank you.
Who needs blue milk, eh?
I assume the first name is All Only Ever. So thank you, All Only Ever, for that. And then Ken Deserves a Raise Money edited their pledge from $10 to $20.
Shit, I think I should get that.
So Ken, you got a raise of $10 a
hell
month.
yeah.
So congratulations. Oh, and Kyle here is doing tricks. HardOCP.com and HardForum.com edited their pledge from $5 to $1. And then edited his pledge from $1 to $5, just so I'd have to say his naming.
No,
And I
you're not
think
even-
that's cheating.
That is cheating.
Kyle's great at marketing.
That's true. He is, yes.
Viral
he's doing.
marketing at his
Thank you, everybody. And I guess even Kyle for those new pledges. Let's talk about the...
Before we go on,
Yeah, go
can
ahead.
I ask a question?
You may.
And it is a serious one.
Okay.
Remember how Lenovo had that kind of special touch screen thing that you could change it between one or two things? Did we see anything like that this year at CES? And do you think that has anybody else showed anything like that? You remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The one that was a book.
It was the Lenovo book or something like that, and the keyboard was a capacitive touch interface, not really a screen, but you could use it to draw on like a Wacom pad as well.
So
We reviewed that, didn't we?
yeah, we did. So sort of the real answer to this wasn't out of CES, but in the past couple of weeks, and I read another leak today. Oh, I forget the name of the project, but Microsoft is apparently going to launch a Surface product that is like this, where it's two screens that fold in together on a hinge. It's not a foldable screen necessarily,
Right.
People don't think, but though it's two screens, like the old Courier concept, if you remember that from 5, 6, 7 years ago, whatever it was, like two actual LCDs that fold together in a book format. And this is kind of going to be supposedly their re-entry into the mobile space, not necessarily a phone, but maybe more of like a consumer-like tablet.
Interesting.
Running Windows on ARM, Snapdragon on ARM. Like that's going to be their product for Snapdragon on ARM.
I hadn't seen that yet.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's been floating around a lot, which is exciting.
But no, I don't think we saw anything like that again at CES this year, Josh. And I don't... at the end of the day, I think that device was incredibly niche. It was not good to type on, but very interesting just from a design perspective. Lenovo does. It's surprising. Most people don't realize Lenovo does that, but they do a lot of very kind of out of left field or creative or
Edgy.
risky design things like that. I don't even know if edgy maybe, but like just risky stuff. Like they
The
try a
original
lot of new
Yoga
things.
was that.
Yeah, the
And it
original
was
Yoga was
massively
that.
successful.
They did the magnesium body
That's true.
device.
The super light one.
It was super light, but it was also very expensive, and it never apparently turned into another
how much money
product.
do you think they invested in that hinge, the watch hinge or watch band hinge?
Oh, I bet quite a
for
bit.
the that watch
for these.
band
Yeah.
Yeah, those are sweet.
And they've done a lot of good stuff, but they don't tend to get the edgy credit that like Microsoft gets for its Surface devices, or even like Dell gets for the Infinity Edge display and those types of things. So something for Lenovo to keep an eye out for.
Andromeda, Microsoft Andromeda is the project I'm thinking of. So if you Google that, Windows Central has a good article that ran today, sort of recapping all of the rumors.
And plus, you can sing about it.
Yeah.
I do wish that laptop had come out, like had been more of a thing, because
The magnesium
that was
body
just
one?
that was a comically
It came out and they like it was a thing. Like they sold it. I reviewed
but
it.
it just didn't like catch on because the price was too high, I think.
It had a non-standard keyboard because it was literally an NEC laptop with a Lenovo badge on it.
Oh, yeah.
Was the main
yeah,
issue with it.
they just never followed up on the idea. I don't think
That display couldn't get bright enough.
It was
'cause
just-
they're
it was just
concerned
so
about
dang-
battery
it was
life.
just so dang
It's
funny
right.
when
It
they
couldn't get up
first-
to 180 nits
Yeah.
to run our battery test.
But when
I
they
don't
first
think.
handed it to us and we thought
This was a hollow
it was
shell.
a hollow shell of a
Yeah.
laptop, and then opened up the screen and it turned on.
I would love
This
to
is a
see.
trick.
I'd love to see
What?
them make an X1 out of that material if they could get the
I would
durability
still love
out
to
of
do
it.
that.
I actually asked them about that when they're doing the ThinkPad stuff in Japan. They were talking about like, I was researching alternative materials, and I was the guy who raised my hand. I was like, "So you remember that lithium
Yeah.
magnesium stuff?"
And what'd they
How about
say?
that? Like, well, that's certainly an area we're still looking into.
That shit was expensive.
One day.
How about plastic?
One day, maybe.
There was even a
I had
moment.
magnesium parts of my motorcycle just because they wanted to shave off pounds and ounces off of that damn thing.
Yeah, but there was even moments.
cool
There was even a
looking
moment after they opened it where I was like, "Oh, that's cool. They wired up some. They just have like a pre-printed something on the screen there, so it just lights up and looks like it turns on, right?" Like,
You know what the best part about it is? If you're stuck in the wilderness with this laptop, you can shave
a fire.
off the outside and make a fire that's 2,000 degrees.
Sweet.
And then
That's what I want.
Magnesium,
That's what I want
baby.
right next to a lithium ion battery.
What could go wrong? Just don't drop it.
seems fine. All right, let's get to our next review. Sebastian posted this up of the Fractal Design Define R6 tempered glass case. Actually, I saw a tweet today from Fractal Design claiming that there were so many orders for this case that they couldn't keep up. They're originally going to do multiple colors, and they've decided to instead focus on filling all the black coloring orders first.
Oh, we're
Before
so
Candy
popular.
I know. We're so popular, we can't keep up.
Get it in any color you want, as long as it's black.
Slick looking design. I think as somebody who looks at these case reviews through the same manner that everybody else is, this reminded me immediately, like you can tell that this is a Fractal design, if you will. It is, it does support up to EATX despite being a, I guess this would be a mid-tower chassis.
Looks quite roomy on the inside.
Yeah. Sound dampening steel. I'm not exactly sure what that means, other than maybe thicker steel
Maybe it has a layer on it.
than normal.
It's got a
Probably
foam layer
some
on
kind
the
of
inside.
epoxy on the outside that stops vibration.
And Jeremy, you said it does have a foam
and
layer
there's
too.
foam layers on
Okay.
the side panels.
All right, fair enough.
Wow.
Fair enough. Dust filters in the bottom fan and the front fans. A lot of capability here for water cooling. It's one of the other things that they're really known about. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so you can kind of see the layering in there. You can see that there is this cover on the top that I guess it could be removed depending on if you have the correct coolers installed. Standard kind of up top input, tempered glass side panel. It does something. It doesn't do like the offset side panel that I think a lot of people do when they make this move to tempered glass. It still kind of looks like a normal door. It is a normal door. Yeah, and here's what the top of the case looks like if you want to use it for ventilation for water cooling and whatnot. Thumb screws installed on both sides of the panels. You can see there's that noise dampening material. They have. I think this is a great. It's still a solid design choice in my view to visually and probably from a cooling perspective separate the different segments of the case, keeping things neat and clean. And allowing the power supply in other areas to cool more effectively. You can look at the back and see where the hard drives, SSD mounts are. I like the idea of mounting the
fan
SSDs
controller.
in the back. Yep, a very expansive fan controller, good cable routing options. I still like the white accents on things. You can see here, Sebastian has installed the 240 millimeter Corsair H100i GTX.
Boy, that gets kind of awful close and down by the.
It does. It kind of interferes with this here. I guess that's
bit.
kind of the pitfall of the mid tower designs, more or less, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but a good overall design seemed to be easy to put together. There's a completed build. Again, I think that looks super clean.
Yeah.
With very minimal effort, and then not as minimal effort to keep the back clean.
I mean, you just bundled
Sebastian
everything
Got
together.
those Velcro straps.
Yeah.
How handy is that?
Sebastian does a good job too. Yeah.
He's such a nice boy.
He's a very nice young man most of the time. Decent performance in terms of temperatures, kind of right in range with Silverstone's and Inwin's recent cases in terms of noise levels towards the bottom, actually, which is a positive. And it did get an Editor's Choice Award, highly recommended from Sebastian if you're looking for a new case. This one apparently is very popular, according to the manufacturer
The
themselves.
people that sell it.
But Sebastian seemed to like it, so maybe he is the reason why there's so many outstanding sales.
I'd buy a case because Sebastian recommended it.
I kind of only buy cases if Sebastian recommends it.
You don't buy cases.
I usually make Sebastian send me the cases he's reviewed that he recommends. So is that
You
better?
recommend this case? Yeah, send me that one.
Yeah. So check that out if you haven't. Now let's move on to a storage review.
Uh-huh.
The Samsung 860
Evo
Pro and Evo. Yeah.
Yep.
These are SATA drives,
Just like the 850.
2.5-inch standard SATA drives here.
They're going to make the Evo only. They're going to make in M.2 and MSATA as well.
They still make an MSATA drive.
Because they've historically made the 850 in those other form factors as well. And there's enough of a market still that they were like, okay, we'll continue to make these. And the capacities can't go as high as 4 terabytes for those form factors just because they can only fit so many flash
Packages
drives onto, into the packaging. So it tops off at, what is it? It's 2 terabyte for the M.2, 1 terabyte for the MSATA.
And these are all MLC drives, right? No TLC, no SLC caching.
The Evos are the regular Evos.
I'm sorry?
3-bit MOC, it says, Ryan.
Yeah.
That's TLC.
Okay.
3-bit multi-level cell.
They
which
call it
is-
3-bit.
They're priming you for QLC, which they'll call 4-bit MLC.
Yeah,
I see.
That's just another way to say it. They're the same as what you're used to as far as an Evo
Okay.
or a Pro. Different controller, called an MJX. Used to be like, MCX and stuff like that.
Sure.
Capacities right off the bat here, they're starting off with a 4 terabyte capacity, right? That's something that with the 850 they
On
worked.
both the Pro and the Evo.
Yes.
Okay.
And they only worked their way up to that with the 850s, and I think they only did that for the Evo.
I think so.
I don't think they did that for the Pro. The warranty actually, technically, if you want to split hairs, the warranty is dropping because the Pro 850 Pro launched with a 10-year warranty.
Did the TVW go up or down?
The TVW went way up.
Okay.
Over the previous models. So the 850s had an issue where they first launched the drives like 3 years ago, right? And they were on not as many layers of flash as they're doing now, right? They've, we did a review like a year ago where they went from version 2 to version 3 NAND and, went up to 48 layer and stuff like that. Anyway, they were able to do that without affecting performance, and they're still able to do that without affecting performance. Thing is, though, you have 3 years worth of flash upgrades, basically. The endurance has actually gone up over time for even the 850.
Okay.
But their spec, the original specs have remained.
They didn't change it. Okay.
They didn't change them because you can't just change it on the fly for the same model of a thing. Then somebody would be like, oh, but my drive was
It's
supposed
almost
to do...
like you shouldn't put different hardware in the same model of a thing.
Yeah, it's almost like you should just call it a new model, right? So now that they're finally doing that, Samsung was able to use the endurance specs of their current flash that's shipping.
Right.
Coupled with the controller's probably doing a couple other tricks to try to make it even better. All told, you're looking at, compared to something like the MX500 as a benchmark, which is
a recently released SATA SSD.
SATA SSD with good endurance.
Yep.
The Evo of this model is actually double the MX500, and the Pro is like triple as far as the endurance goes.
Endurance. Okay.
Yeah. Now, it might be getting to the point where like MX500 was already really high, and that was already higher than the 850. And you don't see a lot of people saying they just expended all of the wear out of their 850,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So it's kind of past the point of good enough now. So, temper that amazing endurance of this drive because it's a client drive. Unless you're putting it in a server or something, in your lifetime you might not hit, might not wear this guy out.
Yep.
Performance specs slightly higher than 850, just generally speaking, a couple of megabytes per second higher, maybe like 10K IOPS higher here or there. As far as ratings go, right?
I like this picture of the internals.
Yeah, the internals are even more comical than the 850, actually, because that middle drive is a 1 terabyte.
So much wasted space.
Yeah, that middle
You know what
drive
you
is a
could
1
put in
terabyte
there?
Evo, and you could almost
a
fit that in.
chamois.
You could almost fit that into like a thumb drive.
You could put some more flash in there is what you could
well,
put
you
in
could.
there.
No, you put
could.
the SATA
You
connection
cheap
on the other end
bastards.
and
Even-
have a
even
double-headed
the-
SSD.
Even the 4 terabyte Pro model, which arguably is more flash dies and that's the one on the right, that PCB didn't even fill the entire housing. So even that,
What a scam.
that's like that would fit in like a, if they even were still produced in volume, I think that PCB would fit in a 1.8 inch form factor.
Now we know why NVMe M.2 drives exist, because you don't need a lot of PCB space.
Not anymore. Not with things like 64-layer VNAND, and especially if you're doing 3-bit per cell, and you could just really
Stack it high.
and you're stacking the dies within the packages, et cetera, et cetera. Like you're going vertical within the dies, and you're going vertical with the dies themselves, and yeah. So long story short, you can fit a lot of storage in a very small space now.
All right, so this is something we've understood for a while. SATA drive.
Yes.
What does the performance look like?
Boring.
So here's what my hope was going into this. SATA SSDs have been bottlenecked by the interface for the max specs, like for forever.
Sure.
Now.
Max
right?
throughput.
Max throughut.
Yeah,
Even the max,
max
IOPS is limited by the interface now.
Yeah.
The interface isn't going any faster. So you're
Just shitty, but anyway.
So the best thing you can, now there's still room to improve, but what it all boils down to is just your low Q depth random performance and your low Q depth sequential
That's what you're
performance.
looking to see improvements in.
Which just so happens to be the thing that we have in the past few years shifted our focus to, and be like, once we started doing traces of actual systems, and we come to realize, hey, look, your low Q depth is actually where it's at as far as performance goes. So we should focus on that, right? As opposed to the maximum this and the maximum that.
Here's your sequential throughput. Guess what?
Yeah.
Just over 500 megs a second.
Just over 500 megs a second. But notice it does very well even at Q depth 1.
Sure.
It's almost at full.
Okay.
Right? The random, not so much. But this is the case for all SATA SSDs.
Fair.
Okay, so it is higher than normal, but it's not so much higher that,
Right, so
oh
what
my
page
goodness,
I
it's
wanna look at
groundbreaking.
Which drive?
You
Which
might as
drive?
well just jump. Well, okay. So all the performance focuses, they're all boring because they're all saturating the interface.
Got it.
Regardless of the size.
Fair.
Even the Evo model we got, since it was the 1 terabyte model, the cache test doesn't show anything because the flash goes faster than the interface.
Right.
So there is no fall off when you run out of the amount of cache that drive has. So I would just go straight to like your performance comparisons, like the first page there.
Sequential and random.
Yeah, actually, that's probably a bad page to look at.
Okay, pick a different one.
Because again, it's SATA, everything
Client
looks the
QE
same.
weighted.
Yeah, go to that.
All right. I'm here.
So now we're looking at the lower Q depths.
All right.
We're doing a weighted average, and this is also across filling the drives to empty and half full and almost all the way full, and all this data is crunched together, and it turns into.
What if I'm a pessimist?
Well,
That it's half empty,
yeah, we also do that.
and the IOPS are going to suck on it anyway.
Well, okay. So if you look at the way to be pessimistic. So if you look at your read performance, again, flash-based things, the random writes go higher than the random reads because they acknowledge it before they actually did it for writing. Okay, so reads is actually the tough thing for these SSDs to do. I have interleaved a 860 with an 850 of an equivalent capacity.
Yes.
That we had already tested.
Got it.
Right? It
Can you spot the difference?
It didn't match Pro for Pro everywhere because we only had a 4 terabyte Evo and 850 to compare it to. But if you look at it, you'll notice, okay, so these random read results are slightly higher for the 860s, especially for that Pro 4 terabyte. Like that's the highest number we've seen out of a SATA drive right there, that 20,000 figure. That's actually encroaching into some NVMe SSDs that we've tested. So to get that out of a SATA product is pretty good. Now realize that number is going to equate to your random performance, like your this is your really the closest number we have to like your feel. You're using the SSD. How responsive does it feel?
Okay.
Right. How snappy is it when you're trying to do random read operations? Sequentials, that gets boring. And as a matter of fact, in some respects, some numbers like the Pro, the 850 Pro is beating the 860 Pro in the same capacity. So that's just down to they tuned it one way versus another way, right?
All right, so I'm in the mixed burst.
Okay, mixed burst, also important, right? This is where we have a simulated download going on in the background at the same time we're trying to load stuff. And this is where things start to fall apart because the look at the 850 Pro second drive versus the 860 Pro, right? They're both writing at roughly the same speed during the test, but the 850 Pro's got like almost 100 meg per second worth of throughut.
Same thing happens on the Evo 1 terabyte.
On the Evo 1 terabyte, yeah.
860 versus 850. And then the Pro, the 4 terabyte model is a little bit different of a comparison because we got Pro versus Evo.
We're comparing it to the 850 Evo, which arguably that generation kind of started to have a harder time with some things when it got to such a high capacity. So, it just seems like, anyway. So that's kind of like, it's the first iteration of this thing. It's on the first firmware. Maybe they just need to do some optimization, right? They're on a different controller. So, maybe cut them a little bit of slack there. But if you look at that mixed burst throughput, the next chart down, so that's your actual time it took for all these reads. And now I'm realizing the pcper logo is blocking one of the numbers on us.
It's not important.
Well, it is because that's the 860 Pro.
Oh, and it's a big number.
And it's kind of a high number. It's like 21 or 22 seconds total worth of time.
Close to 21.4.
Yeah, so you've got the older models beating the newer models by several seconds.
Yeah.
Out of 20 seconds. That's noticeable, right? And then lastly, another issue we ran into was the trim speed test, which is if you look at the first couple of charts there, they look kind of normal. Like, the Samsung drives are relatively low figures, and then the MX500 actually had an issue with trim speed, and Crucial / Micron is actually addressing that. They're looking into it already based on our review. But I had to go and create this new result based on something that, like, these Samsung drives did things in a way that actually broke the way that we were doing our test. And I had to go back and calculate things a different way. Because when we calculate the trim speed normally, we compare an empty versus a full drive if you were trying to trim the entire span of the drive. Mm-hmm. Empty drives have always, and I mean like almost every SSD we've tested so far, have always been very quick. If the drive was already trimmed and you issued a full drive trim command, it was almost instant. So it was just assumed that was going to be a low number, right? And then I took whatever that number was and subtracted it from how long did it take when it was full. And we came up with our previous result. Well, I noticed that the 4 terabyte 860 took almost a minute to quick format when we first got it and plugged it into the test system.
Right.
That seemed weird. It was like 40 or 45 seconds or something. And it continued to do that regardless. It did that fresh out of the box, any other state, and that actually scaled proportionally with the other capacities. So even the Evo 1 terabyte took like 10 seconds. The half a terabyte 860 Pro took like 5 seconds. Now, the lower amounts of time, that's 5 or 10 seconds. That's like nothing. But when you get up to 4 terabytes and it takes almost a minute, and that's like when you're doing your Windows install and it goes to create the partition, it just sits there and does nothing for a minute. That's when you're like rebooting your computer because you think something just froze.
Right.
And same thing happens in disk management. If you plugged in the 4 terabyte drive as a secondary drive, let me quick format my drive, and disk management just hangs for 45 seconds, right? So it's to the point where that's a problem. No SSD should sit and do nothing for 45 seconds ever.
Oh, that's a bad user experience.
Yeah. It's a solid state drive. It's supposed to be fast at things. It shouldn't take, over 30 seconds for any given thing, basically. Anyway, so we're working with Samsung. Hopefully they'll address that, and maybe there'll be some optimizations in, future firmware. Moving on, pricing.
Yep. What's it look like? 10 cents a gig.
No. The pros are running like, there's MSRPs, but like the pros are running like 46, 47 cents a gig. Evos are running
That's too high.
I know. Evos are running like 33 cents a gig, which it's too high. Like we have.
The price of storage is too damn high.
Of this storage is too damn high.
Well, I mean, it's true. And Samsung, I think, thought they would be able to get away with, that's the pricing we're using for the 850. And the 860 is a better model and supposedly faster and this and that and the other thing, and better endurance and all these things. And they just priced these like the same way that the previous model was priced, as if it was just going to slide right in there. Problem is, we're now at the point where you have NVMe SSDs starting to come out, good ones, at a lower cost per gig than this for the Evo.
Yeah.
Intel just launched a 760p, which we have a review probably coming up tomorrow morning on. We've already tested all 3 capacities of that guy. and the cost per gig is actually lower for that product. That's an NVMe SSD that does like 3 times the throughput of these SATA things.
Yeah.
And
Samsung's just leaning in on its name being the most dominant SSD
I think that's what they're doing, but I think that's going to hurt them now because you can't launch a new SATA SSD at that price and expect.
Yeah.
Like there's just too much competition at
It's not going to stay there.
Well, I know it's not going to stay there.
There's
There's still so many laptops and people who don't understand NVMe or even don't even have it on the board. So you got to refresh your product line.
And it will, and the Evo at a minimum will continue to be like the 860 Evo will be like the default option if you have an M.2 device or an M.2 SATA device or an M-SATA device. That it's a laptop that only had, it had M.2, but it was only linked to SATA. That's possible, right? If it's a much older machine. Those will still be great SSDs to put in there. But again, they also make them in an 850. And as long as you could find that in stock somewhere, it's probably going to be cheaper. Right?
They also make MX500s in M.2.
Yeah, that too.
Which will probably be cheaper, and WD Blues.
So if anything, the way to go in the near future is like this drive's supposed to hit within a couple of weeks, supposed to hit the market. If you're in the market for an SSD, I would say look for the 850s because their price is going to drop.
Yep. In theory, they should.
In theory. Yeah. I mean, it's going to go up a bit, like afterwards, but like as the stock dwindles to almost nothing. But, for a while there, you're going to probably see some blowout sales coming on. I mean, there's not really any kind of like sale holiday thing coming up where prices would normally
Valentine's Day, I feel
Chinese New Year.
Valentine's Day is a great time to put
buy an
SSDs
SSD
on sale. Yeah.
Well, that might actually coincide when the 860s hit the market. So it might turn into Valentine's Day sale on 850s.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, check out his review. It's on the website. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep.
All right. Let's take a moment here to thank today's podcast sponsor. This episode of the PC Perspective Podcast is brought to you by our good friends at Casper. Casper is a sleep brand that continues to revolutionize its line of products to create an exceptionally comfortable sleep experience one night at a time. Their mattresses are designed by humans for humans. The original Casper mattress combines multiple supportive memory foams for a quality sleep surface with just the right sink and just the right bounce. Its breathable design helps you sleep cool and regulate your body temperature through the night. And they're not just a mattress company. Casper now offers a wide array of products to ensure an overall better sleep experience. Josh has submitted many suggestions of things they could sell to improve sleep experiences, but so far they've only done a handful of those, probably not at Josh's suggestion. The Casper mattresses are made in the USA, and buying them is exceptionally easy. You can order online. It's delivered to your door in a compact but slightly heavy box with free shipping and free returns in the US and Canada. There is a risk-free 100-day trial. And this is, I think, what really changes the idea, right, of ordering a mattress online, that type of thing. The 100-day free trial, that if you consider we spend 1/3 of our lives on a mattress, it's so important to truly sleep on a mattress before you actually commit to that purchase. That's why Casper gives you 100 nights to try it out risk-free, and they will send somebody to come take it from you if you decide you don't like it.
Will they crush your femurs?
I don't think so. I'm going to say no, and don't hold it against me if it's not the case. The Casper mattresses are really, it's a unique buying experience. For example, maybe you're my wife in your home and the UPS delivery guy shows up with a 143-pound box that's the size of a mini fridge or so.
And leaves it in front of your garage door.
They left it in front of the garage door, right? So we brought it inside, and you wouldn't think that a king-size mattress would fit in a box this size. You cut it open,
I wouldn't
and it's
think
like
so.
It's not an explosive expansion of mattress.
How was the expansion compared to your previous?
It's about the
standard?
same. It's about the same. It's a slow. It's like what would you equate this to? A slowly inflating balloon? I don't really know.
It's like those sponge things that are in a capsule, and you put it in the water, and then
they slowly expand out.
Expands out.
You can get $50 toward a select mattress or toward select mattresses by visiting casper.com/pcper and using the promo code PCPer at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. That's a $50 credit towards select mattresses by visiting casper.com/pcper and using promo code PCPer at checkout. And we thank Casper for their continued support of the PC Perspective podcast. Keep making them mattresses, boys and girls, whatever it means. All right, let's get back to our news items here. First up, Jim built a Plex server for us and wrote a story about it. That sounds nice, right? So, and actually, this project came up. So we use Plex for a lot of stuff here, or as Kyle likes to call it, films and content.
Home videos.
Home videos. We each have individual libraries for that purpose.
Oh God, no! Then it would be shared with everybody else.
No, it's an individual library.
Oh, okay.
You exchange permissions.
Got it.
But we had multiple people streaming off the server and all that type of stuff. So we had some compute issues in addition to some storage issues. So we thought about it, and obviously, I think the platform that made the most sense for us was the Ryzen Threadripper. Here's a brand new high performance processor platform that came out that is all about thread count and performance, especially when you get into some of these transcoding, rendering tasks, which is exactly what Plex does all of the time.
Yeah, because, happily, excess is never enough.
Correct.
Never.
And in this case, it's not, right?
Not when it comes to hard drives.
Yeah. So the idea here was to build an entire platform, and the Threadripper 1950X was the basis for this. We obviously had some goals of storage. We ended up going with we looked at FreeNAS, we looked at Unraid, but we ended up going with Windows. I know this was a debate that was in the comments of this story already about why would we go with Windows. And a lot of it came down to...
We wanted it to just work.
We wanted things to just work. So we're using a hardware RAID card that handles all of that stuff for us with... How many hard drives do we have in here, Ken?
16.
16 drives. So you can see the system hardware there. 960 Pro for the OS.
So kind of the core issue with the operating system, I spent, as you can attest to, several weeks on and off screwing with new operating systems, FreeNAS. I actually came across Open Media Vault, which is a Debian-based alternative to FreeNAS.
Yeah, we actually did try
It's not
all
based on
these.
ZFS, which you should check out because it's awesome.
Yeah.
But the core issue came down to Samba compatibility with Windows, and the rest of the clients in the office were Windows PCs. So it just so much easier to use Windows. We could have fine-tuned Linux to be the perfect Samba host to our clients and everything, but, it was just easier. And we used Windows 10 Pro instead of Server because we were having some compatibility issues with Server that were frustrating to diagnose, as anyone who's ever messed with Windows Server will attest to. And, at some point, we just needed it to work. We don't have an IT department. We just needed it. We were all needed to do other things.
And since we have a hardware RAID card, well, we're on NTFS, so it's kind of iffy. But since we have a hardware RAID card, we can swap OSs out from underneath the bulk of the storage, and bulk storage remains there. So not like if you're using, anything that's a software-based RAID, you can't just switch to some other type.
True.
Right? Like your array just goes away. So, now since we have a partition that's actually it's REFS.
Got it.
Yeah, we did actually go with that.
But since we went with that, we're stuck with Windows. But any flavor we want, we can reinstall server. And just
Windows XP, for example.
No, no.
Oh, all right. Well, it's a shot. So we've got, we've got a Gigabit X399 motherboard in there, Noctua cooler, Corsair Vengeance memory. We are using 10 gigabit Ethernet, courtesy of the Intel X540 NIC.
And that was one of our problems where we could get Samba working all right, but it was getting that full 10 gig link, maximizing NIC settings, getting that full 10 gig on both sides was a hell of a struggle. It's not as turnkey as you would think it would be with anything, as it turns out, and the source of a lot of my personal frustration.
Our storage solution is unique in that we used all external hard drives.
Yep.
Put in some USB add-in cards.
Yeah.
And then we rated them. This was interesting. I know we've talked about this in the podcast several times about the idea of shucking external hard drives that happen to have prices lower than the OEM bare drives themselves, sometimes by a fairly significant margin.
And if you're lucky enough, contain the name brand actual
the WD Red NAS hard drive. I mean, we're talking about, we paid what, $190 for these?
They were down. They were down to like $160 at one point.
Oh, really?
Like a few of the ones I picked
Jim
up were
writes as low as $150 in subsequent sales. Yeah. And the hard drives themselves were worth 250,
If,
When we bought them, bare reds were going like
280,
280.
yeah, 280 or 300
for the
they were
bare
going
drive,
for.
or on sale for 150 if you're willing to take apart some plastic.
Yeah, with a free USB external enclosure, basically.
Which you could use never. Although Ken might use them, right? When
mean, he could.
when he's
Yeah,
been
Yeah, I'm actually
for 'em.
looking for one when they go back on sale to use as an external drive because I'm not a crazy person who bought 32 of them.
Well,
What, like what?
Well,
What do you mean?
we bought, well,
We
16,
bought 32 of them.
16 were for the office. but-
Actually, I think we have more than 32 among us now. I
mean,
think you have more
maybe.
than 16 at your home.
Yeah, I do, actually. because
Just because
then
it's cheap doesn't mean you have to
no,
buy it.
because
now.
then I caught some people shucked them and then listed them on eBay, and they only went for like 150 or 160.
the bear drive.
Yeah, as it turns out, everyone knows about this.
Nice.
So then I just bought some of those in addition because it wasn't on sale at the moment. So I just, I have more.
What is this chassis? The iStar USA 4U rack mount chassis. It's got 16 3.5-inch drives.
So this is a weird chassis.
Oh, why's
this
that?
This is not quite enterprise, but more like
Home theater.
it's more like shoving your home equipment into a server box.
Sounds like what we were
So-
doing.
So that's why we have no internal pictures, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it looks like
I mean, it doesn't look
It
bad.
doesn't look too bad.
It doesn't look bad. It just looks like a regular,
So essentially, instead
you got
of
a Blu-ray
needing
drive on it.
it could.
No.
No, I still use the Microsoft HD DVD drive.
Oh, yes.
It was a good product.
Yeah.
Good product.
it actually has room for a 2.5-inch optical drive in that chassis. But the thing with this chassis is it supports regular ATX size motherboards. So instead of needing a special server form factor board to fit in this chassis, you just put an ATX board in there. And also, the drive cages don't have sleds, which across 16 drives is very much a time saver.
that is
so you
very
just
nice.
kind of open the door and slide an entire 3.5-inch drive there. It's
Yep.
not necessarily the best, most real, like, it doesn't feel the best in it. It's kind of a little jank getting the drives in and out, but
Yeah.
it works ultimately. They have drive access lights on them. And uses what, like 4 mini SAS connections? So we just get straight to the RAID card.
That's another part of the reason that makes this a lower cost solution is that there's no SAS expanders in that backplane. It's just
breakouts.
It's just straight wired. Each row of 4 goes to a mini SAS connector.
Okay.
But absolutely no problems with the chassis. It's been solid for our uses. Like if you're looking to put like a transplant a regular server style rack mount motherboard into there, it's not going to work for you. We had some of those that we were looking at and just like, this is for a desktop machine in a rack mount.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you at least pick up like the FSP twins for the power supply?
Come on.
Or is it just like a Antec thing sticking out the back?
It's like a Corsair AX 1200. It's on and up.
Yeah, this one does.
Yeah,
It
fair.
didn't come with like server. Some of these will come with a pair of redundant power supplies already.
Well, that's what the FSP one does because
Yeah.
it fits in like a normal form factor.
Yeah.
No,
I
actually,
know
they
what you
got
mean
one
now.
of those Antec 480 watt LED
Exactly.
LED ones from about
Yeah.
10 years ago, and they've got a ton of the 4-pin Molex to SATA, and then to whatever it is.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
they're fine.
Hey,
gonna
Sparkle,
last
that used to be
forever,
good, right?
bulletproof. Yeah.
Used
PC
to.
power and cooling.
Now, in terms of performance, storage performance being the most important thing, we're not that great, I would say.
As it turns out.
The RAID controller is maybe old. Is that our problem?
It might. I don't remember because we went through a different card and then went to this one.
Yeah,
We had a lot of testing configurations.
we did a lot on this.
There was at least one, like we were doing 700 or 800 meg per second initially, and then something changed, and we just need to look at it and figure out what changed.
From the CPU side, one of the kind of general thoughts for transcoding on Plex, Jim writes here, is like 2,000 CPU marks per stream, right, is what you'll consume. So in a multi-threaded environment, you run this test and you get an idea of about how many simultaneous Plex streams could you support
And what did
on average.
What did it say?
So we scored 23,000, and at 2,000 per stream, you're looking at 10 to 11 simultaneous users could be on that system, which is not something we really expect to happen. Also note, of course, that this server is also hosting kind of like our corporate file server as well. right? Obviously, it doesn't need as much CPU for any of that. It's just
And
it's just
yes,
bulk
we're
storage.
backing it up to another network
Yes,
attached storage device.
it is backed
Yes.
up elsewhere. Yes.
Have you hired an IT guy yet?
That's
No.
what Jim kind of is.
Jim handles that for us in the back. The IT stuff.
You're IT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He says we are unfortunately
We are fudged.
Yeah.
Well, you're getting what you pay for.
So there's some thoughts in here about, I know some people might have thought about, hey, why not buy a pre-owned used Xeon server?
Which is very popular right now. Like
It is.
E5, E2s are being decommissioned and pretty cheap on eBay for dual socket systems where you can get 20 cores.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and it's a fine option. It's just for us, we had access to this hardware, but also there's the possibility of, buying new hardware versus buying used. You don't know exactly what it was used for. Also,
You don't want one of your power supplies dying in that chassis due to just hours being hit.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
true.
having to find a weird replacement for this Dell
Those are
server
noisier
power supply. Yeah.
than the configuration we built, right? Because we got to choose the components and the coolers and the power supply and all that type of stuff. So there's some
We
advantages
put a
there.
Noctua cooler in our server, yo.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it is very quiet.
yeah.
We can even make it quieter if we wanted to, if we switched out the fans for something else.
Windows updates suck in terms of quirks,
There is that.
right? Because we're not using Windows 10 server or Windows Server. We can't disable that stuff completely. So
I
every
mean, we
once in a while,
can if we want to. It'll be vulnerable to stuff over time.
Yeah. So in terms of mission criticalness, hey, if I'm at home and my daughter's watching Snow White, it's not a mission critical thing. If it needs to reboot and go back into it, that's fine. So that is one quirk. The other thing would be the storage performance that we need to troubleshoot more and figure out what that causes. Because ideally, we wanted to have 10 gigabit network throughout, being able to move data around at a gig per second. We have other issues with our 10 gigabit cards in general, not because of the Plex server or the server at all. But that's something else still on the list of troubleshooting. But that's the Ryzen Threadripper based server platform, right? Obviously,
Dude, look at that rack.
Yeah, it's nice. Look at those blue lights and
Yeah.
stuff.
It's a big rack.
Jim found the one angle that makes that room look not a disaster,
Yeah,
so I do
no
appreciate. And it's still kind of a disaster because you can see some Ethernet cables running straight up, and that's our that's our two-way mirror that I use to stare out at Ken's desk throughout the day.
It
just to make
literally,
sure.
Ken's head is 2 feet from that
Yeah,
on the other side.
yeah. I use it and I watch him. I make sure he's doing the work that he says.
Breathes
he's doing,
heavy
you
on
know?
the glass,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Check out that story if you're interested in building a probably overkill Plex server for your needs. Just like that. Let's run through the rest of the stuff a little bit more quickly. AMD has replaced Raja Kaduri. Josh, any thoughts on this? I don't think either of us really know the two people that are taking over here. Mike Rayfield handling the business side, David Wang covering kind of the engineering technical side for the Radeon
They
Technologies
needed
group.
2 guys to replace him, huh?
Well, they also are bringing in more stuff. So Mike Rayfield from the business side now has the responsibility of the semi-custom business unit under him, which was not under Raja before.
Okay.
But they thought it made more sense. And I agree when Lisa told us that the semi-custom emphasis is really on the benefits of the GPU, right? So pulling that in under the Radeon group makes a little bit more sense, especially if you look at
I mean, the Jaguar cores weren't really, doing it for you.
weird. Meanwhile, the other kind of major public semi-custom customers, Intel, who was buying a Vega part to use on Kaby Lake G.
Yeah.
So, it kind of made sense from that standpoint. But I wondered if you had any initial thoughts on kind of the news, the move, how much time it took for them to do this and what it might mean for 2018 and beyond.
Well, I think that they needed to find the right guys and right people for the position, and perhaps they have. It's good that they kind of split up some of the duties. That means, to me at least, that they're not overloading one person with all these tasks that are actually spending the money to get more people in, to be able to do more stuff and hopefully make the company more money in the end as compared to one really overloaded guy. So, with the change of semi-custom over to the graphics RTG group, I guess, RTG, and plus, 2 new dudes at the top. It's, we have yet to see how they perform, how well they do, how well they handle their new situations, but It's at least positive in terms of people on the board and management that they're willing to give these people extra money to come in and hopefully make a difference for AMD.
Right. I agree. I don't know. They just started, so it's hard to have any specific expectations. I wrote in a different story that what I would expect to see is inside something like a 3-month window, there would be more clarity in the Radeon roadmap, more public and investor discussion around what this company they expect to look like in 2019 and 2020 and 2021. Because I don't want to say that they've fallen behind NVIDIA more, because the RX Vega products are fine, and as a benefit to them, the mining stuff is happening, so they're not losing market share because nobody has market share for the gaming market,
Or
right?
everyone has market share.
Everyone is selling everything they can make, so it doesn't really matter at this point. Now, this will change at some point. And then if you look at non-gaming markets like machine learning and artificial intelligence, autonomous driving, that type of stuff is an area where AMD is significantly behind NVIDIA. So seeing what that roadmap is going forward, I think would be pretty important for them. But
is NVIDIA and AMD really making as much money as they could? Because if you think about it, we've got memory that costs more than it has in a long time. They sell the chips to their partners, and the partners are the ones who got burned when the coin bubble burst before. So you kind of taking these things all with a grain of salt.
I mean, the AMD and NVIDIA, no thank you. AMD and NVIDIA suffer because they don't make the extra profit that the channel makes from these elevated GPU prices. Now they can do some stuff to address that. They could increase production and say, hey, if they increase production over the contracted rates and say, hey, partner X, if you want these extra cards, because we know they're going to sell, you're going to have to pay us more. That would be an avenue to go, but it's a risk when you increase production that maybe you get stuck holding inventory that you have no contract to sell off anymore as well. So there's a lot of other things that go into play in that regard. You all right over there?
Yeah.
All right. I think, Kyle said in the chat that it's hard to come up with a roadmap if you don't know what the company is capable of, if you have no idea what you're capable of. And I would say there are enough people that still remain inside the company that they understand. Joe Macri is there, and he's going to be able to educate these guys on where they stand and where they're at technologically and how these things could come out. But, at their CES Tech Day, they basically gave no detail on what their plans were for the future on the GPU side. And that's disheartening to both consumers, to enterprise, and to investors that really depend on that to see if they're living up to, even their own metrics. So I think it's good that they've got this hired. They're glad they've got that kind of thing out, from hovering over them, monkey on their back type of deal. They can move past all of that, and I'll be curious to see what changes in the next several months, but then also past that next several quarters, I guess. Yep. Couple of Intel Spectre, a couple security updates. Man, it's depressing to talk about this stuff.
Lovely.
First, don't install any of the patches anymore, I guess.
Not on a mission critical system.
Intel actually now recommends not installing them because there are reboot issues with Meltdown and Spectre updates. Originally thought these reboot updates were only affecting the older processors. It's actually now, Intel confirmed last week that they were affecting the new generations of processors as well.
But they recommend not installing it. It's an automatic update.
Well, not BIOS.
Not
updates.
the microcode.
No, these are the microcode BIOS.
Okay, the
things.
BIOS
This
updates.
is mostly Spectre, not Meltdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
But yeah, when their timetable for that microcode patch was literally 5 days, you kind of had to worry this was going to be a thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Because I don't know. When they first said that they recognized the reboot problems, they hadn't root caused it. Now they say they've root caused it, but they don't know how long it's going to take to get the patches out, because now you have to redistribute to all these OEMs. All these OEMs have to build new versions of BIOS. All these microcodes have to go out that way.
So it's just a different microcode update.
I believe so. Yeah, but it may require some changes on the Windows side too. I don't know the answer to that, like in the patches.
It could.
But that's an easier distribution model than
Microcode through
firmware
BIOS.
updates.
Yeah.
So everything is more of a mess than ever. Was it last week that we talked about AMD also releasing microcode updates? Did we talk about that? I don't remember if we did. And the internet blowing up saying that AMD was now admitting that it was vulnerable to variant 2 of Spectre, whereas before they were saying they weren't. And
There was a bunch of just
the debate there is that AMD initially said that they had a near zero vulnerability to variant 2 of that security issue. They still maintain they have a near zero vulnerability, but they released microcode updates to partners that wanted to take that from near zero to zero.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And the near zero was really just like nobody had shown the ability to exploit it on the AMD side yet. Like the researchers, nobody had a successful attack on the AMD platform for that particular.
Right. There had been no proof of
concept or proof of whatever you want to call it.
POC.
Nobody had done it. But how about that?
Yeah, and it still hasn't been done as far as we know. So it actually got messier for Intel over the last week than cleaner because of the reboots, confirming the reboots. Telling people to continue to apply the patches. Several days later coming out, actually, we take that back, no longer apply the patches because these reboots are more severe than we thought.
Yeah.
We've updated all of our systems here, and I have not had any random issues in that regard.
Yeah.
But, 15 computers in this office does not...
We did a bunch of storage-related testing, and
I saw none of the issues. Looking for performance issues, but we saw no stability issues.
Yeah.
So, I can tell you,
continues.
Yeah, the saga continues. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background here. Microsoft, Intel, AMD, all trying to figure out exactly how this is going to affect them long term. But there's your weekly security Spectre Meltdown update.
Snafu.
Moving on. Jeremy, what do we know about this Gemini Lake motherboard? Intel Pentium Silver processors. If you like branding designations, you're going to love Pentium Silver and Gold.
Yes, the Pentium Silver and Pentium Golds. So these are small, tiny little systems. I think that the one that GIGABYTE and ASRock offer about 6.5 inches square. It's got one of these Pentium Silver or a Pentium Celeron or a slower Pentium Celeron stuck on it permanently. But it's great for tiny little small form factors. I mean, there's nothing brand new about it because, we've sort of seen these before. It's just a brand new HTPC base to build something off of, assuming you want to go out and pay the prices for memory and graphics cards right now. And they're decent little tiny processors.
The interesting thing here to me is that this is the first appearance of Gemini Lake processors at all, right?
Certainly that I know of.
I don't think they've been in budget notebooks or no Nooks have been out shipping with this that I'm aware of.
I know they were showing us a Nook at CES. I don't remember the launch date, but it isn't today, let's say.
Right.
And if you're wondering, it's the UHD Graphics 605. We're not going to see AMD on this.
Yeah, no.
Unfortunately.
For people who don't know, the Gemini Lake is kind of like their...
Probably in some NAS somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I would consider this. Would you consider this Atom class above, below? Yeah. Not below, but it's an Atom class processor.
They don't sell an Atom product anymore.
I think they
do. They?
I don't know. They shouldn't.
If they do, yeah,
but maybe they do.
This is a perfect replacement.
It's just the equivalent of like a 3900 Celeron or something.
No, this is there's quad core options, dual core options.
Yeah.
DDR4 memory, all that stuff. But
because quad cores
you'll find this in a $300 notebook near you.
Right.
Yeah.
And actually, Josh is right in that this will be like powering embedded products like a network array.
Yeah, sure.
Right, like a NAS device.
Just not a Plex server.
I mean, if it's local and you're not doing transcoding,
That's true.
it's probably fine.
That's true.
To just spit out native media. But if you're going to do transcoding for mobile users or other devices, no, I would not recommend it.
Maybe one stream. If you're lucky.
Maybe, yeah. But like as a file server, media server, other types of things,
Sure.
Yeah, I mean that's what this platform is really geared towards.
From what I think it was Tim could find out, the new 605 GPU has 12 execution units and runs at about 750 megahertz. So you do get 4K 60 video out, support for VP9, 8 and 10-bit codecs. So as a media server, yeah, it would certainly be a solid piece to build it off of if you didn't want to use a Threadripper.
Okay, gotcha. In ASRock, yeah, okay, I see. Now there's the ASRock Mini ITX version fanless. I see.
Yeah.
Also interesting. This one's using SODIMM.
Oh, that one only has to buy one slot.
True.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Can't even put.
And
like
it comes in
gig card
an industrial style as well.
Those SATA ports are in such a weird spot.
Yes.
Is that a VGA port or serial? I need to know.
That's probably serial.
Depends on the model.
Oh, parallel. Wait, what?
Look at that CMOS battery.
That's a different motherboard.
Dude, yeah, it's got a printer port.
Yeah.
Oh man.
No, there's two of them.
Oh no.
So the J410 5B ITX is more of a
Serial and
industrial
parallel.
style one.
I can use my old game port joystick again.
You can. And a D-sub monitor, so you don't have to worry about any screen lag.
Interesting. Pretty cool little boards, I guess, if nothing else. What else we got? Ryzen Mobile. Ken posted this up today. I think AMD told us that these devices would be coming.
Yeah.
But now Ryzen Mobile processors from Acer and Lenovo are maybe not shipping, but available for order and shipping soon. Is that right?
Pretty much. So I don't know if it was exactly today or not, but I saw both of these notebooks pop up for order today. They're both, I think the Acer is shipping February 9th or something like that.
Yep, I think that's right.
The Lenovo is like available now, ships in 5 to 7 business days. So we're talking beginning of February timeframe for both of these, but it's the Acer Swift 3, which we've had some experience with the 8th gen Intel version of this lately.
Yes,
I know you've been doing a lot of testing in the office. So this is the Ryzen Mobile version, which you can get in a 2500U or the 2700U. This will be the first product we see shipping with the 2700U, which is interesting because you have the more stream processors on the Vega graphics.
Right.
But essentially, it seems pretty identical to the Intel counterpart.
Yep. Now the Lenovo machine, the IdeaPad 720S, is more complicated in that it looks like a thinner design, I guess.
It's a 13-inch design. It's definitely thinner and lighter, if you go for that term.
Right. But it only has a single channel of memory, which I think is a very poor decision.
Dumb.
On a platform that uses integrated graphics. And it's also a little bit more expensive as well, $1,049 starting point.
But that is with a 512 gig PCIe SSD.
Okay,
that's fair. Which is, pretty good for that sort of configuration.
Yeah.
In their slides, AMD did quote the Lenovo as having a 2700U option, and we haven't seen that yet. So
it's interesting.
That could be to come. More configuration options to come.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't think you'll ever see dual channel memory out of it.
This is what AMD needs. They need their Ryzen Mobile part to exist in more products like this, kind of mainstream products that are also a little bit higher class, higher quality than the bargain basement $400, $500 machines, right? The Swift 3, it's not Acer's flagship. The IdeaPad is obviously not Lenovo's flagship, but these are pretty good.
Mainstream.
Yeah, like mainstream towards the higher end solutions. And even better is that they have directly comparable Intel parts. Maybe, it should be better for AMD if the confidence in their part is well placed. It's good for us because it gives us a terrific comparison point between all these platforms. Now we can get a Swift 3 in and we can look at 7th gen, 8th gen with discrete Ryzen Mobile, go on from there. Which is pretty unique and difficult to find a situation where that always works out.
Especially in the notebook
in the mobile world, yeah, for sure. So if you're interested in Ryzen Mobile, but the HP one wasn't really for you, there are some other options coming available, including the smaller 13-inch version from Lenovo, which I think will be interesting. So, all right, let's get into our hardware software picks of the week as he goes to try to find links. Somebody already. Jeremy, did you take an OEM PC?
I hate to admit it, but yeah, I did.
Okay, I'll let you go first because I think we might be on the same thing here. But
I think we were probably, well, it was inspired by the conversation.
Okay.
And I took a look, and long story short, really, there was a discussion going on, and we're saying it actually makes more sense to build a boutique or to buy a boutique machine than to go out and try and upgrade a current machine, let alone buy yourself or build yourself a new one. And like, yeah, no, that doesn't sound right to me. That's just utterly depressing. And so I took a look at the prices of 1080s and 1080 Ti's and realized that no, maybe this isn't as absolutely horrible as I thought.
Right.
And with 2 minutes work, I put together a 1080 machine with an i7 8700, 1080, 32 gigs of DDR4 2666, and it's $2,600. Just 32 gigs of that memory and the GTX 1080 would run you about that price.
That's true.
Is it really? Is memory?
Almost.
Yeah, memory's expensive.
It's as expensive as it was when it was initially launched now.
Memory's like $50 for 4 gig now.
Yeah. Like the prices when we first saw DDR4 launch, it's pretty much back to that point. The only benefit to this is it's not quite as cheap. So you're not going to see people running out and buying friggin' boutique PCs and ripping apart and selling graphics cards out of them.
That's true.
But it's an odd place that we're sitting at where it's like, yeah, it's not cheaper to build your own PC at this point. And that's upsetting.
And I would say that like this Alienware solution is probably on the high end of that configuration.
Yeah, this was
right?
5 minutes worth of work.
So like the reason we kind of had this conversation internally is I happened to go to Costco when the power was out of our office, and there was an Acer, an ugly case, but an Acer OEM PC that had a 1070, it had a 7700 Core i7 7700 in it. It had 32 gigs of memory. It had a 256 gig SSD, a 1 terabyte hard drive, whatever. But it was $11.99,
which is
dirt
amazing.
It's kind of a smoking price.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, you get.
And because like a 10.
Keep in mind, my price is Canadian.
Oh, so it's
that's
like
not the US.
Fake
bill.
money.
Knock a grand
Yeah,
off that.
You gotta warn me.
That computer's like $50.
So the machine at Costco, which was what my recommendation was going to be, was $1,200, and I think it was $12.99 online when people were looking at
Basically worked out to if you bought the CPU and the graphics
CPU
card.
and the graffics card.
Everything else came in for free.
Everything else was free.
It was like if you bought the graphics card and the RAM, everything was free.
And the RAM.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Because I mean, a GTX 1070 goes for what right now?
I mean, if you're trying to buy one new on
something
PC
like
Part
that.
Picker, it's like $800.
$800. So then $300 for 32 gigs of memory, and there you go. Now you get a processor, a motherboard, an SSD, an ugly case, an optical drive for Josh, a power supply, and so even if you're trying to upgrade a machine, it might make sense to part it out yourself. But for like somebody who
You even get a warranty on the whole thing.
it's a real problem. You get a warranty, you
On the
get
whole
some
package,
support, right?
Yeah.
It's actually a real problem that I've been having conversations with other component vendors on. Because like if you're Corsair and you sell cases and power supplies and SSDs, and the number of people building new machines is dropping dramatically because they can't buy GPUs and they can't buy memory.
Yep. Everything else falls too.
For anything that is a reasonable price.
Yeah.
Everything else comes down with it.
I'm not going to pre-buy my case.
Right. So it's interesting because there's two options. There's two things that occur. The OEM vendors like Dell, HP, Lenovo, the big guys, they have probably fixed price agreements with their vendors. We're going to buy this many GPUs per quarter from you at this price, and they're not going to get jacked up by the Newegg and Amazon price gouging or whatever. So they have the ability to offer consistent pricing throughout. So what once you might have paid $100 to $200 more for a pre-built system, now you're paying $200 to $300 less for that pre-built system
Compared to the.
So now if I'm Acer and I'm seeing this information, you could either look at it two ways. You raise the price because you realize now that you have a commodity that people want.
Sure.
or you maybe maintain the price or increase it very little because you use this as this is our way to get new customers. This is how we're going to get repeat customers. This is how we're going to build our brand and increase revenue in that regard.
And it's just helping them move volume at the price they were asking.
Sure.
Which is better anyway, right? 'Cause
Correct.
some of those machines just don't move. Like,
Well, yeah. But I mean, you would, in theory, if they have intelligent business people working for them, their whole goal is to balance the supply demand thing. Going back to all that, and if suddenly the allocation that they thought they were going to have for Q1 2018 is now gone in 30 days because everybody's going out, now you have a different problem. Now we've extended the cryptocurrency mining inventory issues to OEM PCs.
Great.
And we've had discussions here about laptops, gaming laptops, now being a much more viable option, not from just a performance standpoint because they've been there for a while, but from a pricing standpoint.
Yeah.
Right? If you can get an Asus or an MSI gaming notebook with a GTX 1070 and a 7700 HQ for what do those kind of run for? $2,300?
Oh, no, way less than that.
Oh, really?
We're talking like 15, 17, 18.
So now you're talking about you get a display, a keyboard, you can get G-Sync capability with those.
It's more of a draw with the notebooks. Like you're not saving that much after you might have to pay tax on the notebook where you didn't on the individual components or something like that. It's maybe like $100 savings, but you're getting a full package. You're getting a notebook, which is usually a high premium. And like you said, you could have it, like a lot of them in that range have G-Sync displays or 120 hertz refresh displays that you wouldn't have otherwise.
So for the same price that you could build a gaming computer, you might be able to get a gaming notebook that, you can hook an external display and keyboard and mouse and all that stuff, storage and networking up to, and you don't really lose capability except for like upgrades down the road, but you gain the capability of portability and integrated display and all that type of stuff. So there's these really interesting trade-offs that exist in the last month or so that that hasn't existed for probably ever in the market. So which is why suddenly people might be coming to Alienware that wouldn't have gone there before. Hey, I normally build my PC. I'm willing to spend $1,500 to $2,000. Holy crap! I wanted to buy two 1080 Ti's. That's $2,600. All of a sudden, and I'm just going to go to my friends at Falcon Northwest and have them build me a system. Yeah, it's going to be a couple $100 more, but I can get the stuff. I can actually buy the
what
product.
if they ship you GTX 1040s?
That's true. You could have a world exclusive on the GTX 1040s, and they just turn out to be garbage 1070s, and you throw them away, like our good friend Sebastian.
Yep.
And honestly, like I know, like Jeremy had an Alienware link from Dell where you would have to wait maybe a week for that machine to be built and shipped to you, or maybe not longer. But I did a lot of pricing on what we could go and walk into our local Best Buy and do this week. And they're like HP Omen machines for there was one for $1,250 with a 7700 Not K and a 1070 in it. They could just walk in and buy.
Yeah.
Straight off the shelf. You might even be able to find an open box one there because Best Buy seems to be all about open box these days. Yeah. You walk into a Best Buy store and it's just open products everywhere, which is weird.
I would wager that if you're Dell, HP, Lenovo, if you're Acer, Asus, MSI, you should be marketing to that group now. Hey, mining got you down.
Yeah.
Come see us at Best Buy where we've got 6 gaming machines on a shelf that you can pick up and
Don't be
take home
surprised
today.
if you see a TV commercial.
We've got
like
the perfect
that soon.
website for you to run those ads on too. Contact rshrout at pcper.com.
That's
true.
correct.
We'll make
That's
it happen.
great. We've got tons of people who hate mining that visit our website on a daily basis. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Puget Systems is apparently still really expensive, though.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I thought I'd check.
That's always been the
Falcon
case.
Northwest is going to be one of the expensive ones too. But again, whatever the delta was before, if they haven't adjusted prices, now when you get into the really small boutique places, they may be under the influence of the same price changes that we are.
Yeah.
It's when you get like Dell and HP who are building, massive amounts of machines that they might have some of that price protection.
Not only that, but they bought
in there.
that product months and months ago.
Right. Or they contracted to buy it.
Yeah.
All right, Josh, what do you got for me? Can we move the rundown down?
Change the rundown.
No, I
Also,
can't.
I'm not going to talk.
Oh, there you
That
go.
whole time we were talking about Ryzen Mobile, didn't you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ryzen Mobile in Alienware.
Yeah.
It's a revolution. I'm still not talking.
Continue.
I don't care.
Cool.
Continue.
What we can just do is pick four.
Speaking of graphics cards, this is still one of the only ones that you can get below MSRP. It's the NVIDIA Titan XP Jedi Edition. The Empire Edition is sold out.
Boo.
You
Well
can
then.
still get the Jedi Edition
Not for
for
long.
$11.39.
Well, I think we know which one's more popular then.
Oh
yeah,
no!
nobody likes green. Green is pukey. Red is powerful, just like AMD.
Wait.
Radeon.
Wait a minute.
That is weird that the red one sold out first
No, it's not.
for an NVIDIA
Really?
product.
Red
Regardless
ones go
of the red or-
faster.
No, it's not.
Green reminds
Okay.
people
People love
of
Darth
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Ooze.
These are still really cool looking products, and they're not incredibly overpriced. I mean,
Well, they are.
Well-
they're overpriced for their gaming performance, but not overpriced over their expected price.
Yeah, I mean, officially it's supposed to be $1,200 for the Titan XP, but the Jedi Order Edition that you can still buy
Yeah.
is $11.38.
limit
And
two
you go
per
to the
customer.
website and you click on the lightsaber, and it makes a great sound that annoys the living shit out of you.
If you're thinking about buying a 1080 Ti, this is like your cheapest option without having to deal with new in stock notices and all of that stuff.
That is true.
And it is a little more powerful, so
Plus, it's green and shiny.
And it's green.
it is a nice looking car.
All right.
It comes in a really nice box that
That's
you'll
true.
not know what to do with until
It sits on our
you
shelf
pull it
over
out of
here.
your
That's
card.
also well.
Yeah,
the card
you
sits
stop
in the box
using it. And,
on your
yeah.
shelf over there.
No, the cards are in use.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
but once you stop using it, because 2 years down the line there's something more powerful, then
Yeah.
you can display
Now
it
you display
in
it.
that nice box. If your wife hasn't thrown it away.
Yeah. Ugh. All right, Alan, what do you got? Your last one.
So I recently needed some better mounting solution for a television that was kind of large, and I needed to be able to get behind it occasionally. But I wanted it relatively flat against the wall. Right? So I don't want one of those mounts that's got the big hinge arm thing that you like swing the TV out, like as if you're going to swing it out on like a door or something. I didn't want to do that because first, I think this TV was too heavy for those. Like
Okay.
it would rip the thing off the wall. Anyway, this mount's pretty cool. It's like your standard kind of flush mount thing, except it has like a scissor kind of hinge thing to it. So you can actually grab the set and pull it straight out like 4 inches. And then there's also a pivot for once you have pulled it out 4 inches, then you can actually tilt it up or tilt it down some.
So
Yeah.
what if you get another one of those and put it on
Just
the
keep
opposite
going.
side, and then you could get some really sweet scissoring action
Just keep
going?
going. And you can actually, and so the scissors operate independently of each other, so you can actually angle the TV slightly. I'm just rolling with what Josh started here. But anyway, so you can actually slightly angle the set, like, one side or the other can be angled away from the wall a little bit if you wanted to, right? But for me, it's mainly just I need to be able to get behind the set without having to take it off the wall to mess with stuff. And for this, it's just like, it's like popping the hood on a car, right? You just grab the set, you pull it away from the wall like 4 inches, tilt it up, and now you have access, underneath.
This makes me very worried about those things that hang off the bottom of it.
The things to hang off the bottom of it? Oh,
The thing-
so,
yeah.
okay, so those actually tuck back up.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, so you just push those back up once the set is mounted. But what those are is you pull them down to that position, and then when you pull them like another 1/4 inch, it unlatches the latches so that you can take the TV off the wall.
Oh, so you're not screwing around with a gear that's hidden behind the TV.
No, there's nothing
That's
like that.
Actually, pretty smart.
It just like you take the set, you only have to catch the top catches, and the bottom like snaps in. And then when you pull those little circle
Dangly
things
bits.
there, like ripcord sort of.
Yeah, the dingly bits. Exactly.
Then it unlatches the bottom, and then you can pivot the TV again and then unhook it from the top. So it's really well done. I thought it was cool.
That's it, everybody. That's our show. Thanks for watching. pcper.com/podcast. That's where you can go to find the show notes, links to all the stories we talked about, and our picks and all that jazz. You can also subscribe there, find our YouTube channel, RSS, MP3 downloads, all that stuff exists. pcper.com/podcast. And I think everything is on track for us to have a normal episode tomorrow. Hey, good job, Ken. Behind the
thanks.
computers. Never switched to his own camera.
I don't
I don't think it's on.
Probably not an accident, but that's fine. It's fine.
No, when I do the podcast, I'm the man behind the monitors. None of this,
Pay no
Alex, let's
attention.
point the camera at me, BS. It's
Fair enough, fair enough.
Traditional
Pay no
PC
attention
perspective podcast.
To the man behind the monitors.
All right. That's it, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.
See ya.